Yeah. What do you think about this? Oh yeah. What do you think about this idea that I think maybe needs explaining, that some people might not understand, that some people feel strongly that a band is defined by these specific members, that it's not necessarily a Rolling Stones thing where you can just swap out people.
Yeah, it's annoying. People are like, "Oh, the Beatles." If Ringo's not playing the drums, then it's not the Beatles. Like, but and it makes sense in the way that you're like, well, this is a group of friends more than a band. And what if one of them wasn't there? Then it's not the band. But on the other hand, it's a group of friends who they define themselves. And if Brant says, I just don't feel like this is what I want to do right now, nobody was like, well, maybe some people were like, how can you give up this band? But at the same time, it's like, that's cool. That's why would you do it if you don't want to do it? Don't do it. And but Justin wanted to do it, and he had felt like, to Justin it was really important that this band, it was finally getting where he wanted a band to be. It was coming together in a way that he had envisioned, and having Brant leave was difficult because he was torn between this idea that a band has to be these people, and hey, this band exists on a much more galactic scale outside of any of us. It's larger than the sum of its parts. And Sarah was just starting to play drums around then. It just made a lot of sense that Sarah be the drummer. So that was cool. Yeah. What was the question?
Yeah.
The basic humanity of this band, Carp, and the whole Tumwater scene, that was really inspiring to everyone. Unwound, Mikey, they're just really good people. They're really kind-hearted folks, and they never. There was never any conflict with anyone where they were like, oh, they did some dumb boy thing where they're like making fun of girls or homos or whatever. That never happened. There was no mean-spirited bullshit. It was never part of their identity to be misogynist or in some way making fun of the downtrodden or whatever. They were just doing their thing, and I think that was it just never occurred to them to do that. And that was great. That fit in well with Olympia, definitely, and no one. It was just natural. There wasn't like an indoctrination process. That's just the way they were.
Well, and where do you think that awareness comes from, right? Because that's not always the norm. You don't automatically assume that a lot of the times for a big, loud, crazy band to be so like kind of sensitive and like
They're
aware of.
just good people, and I assume I didn't meet. I wasn't. I don't know their families that well. I met at the time the band. I met Chris's mom a couple times, and I didn't meet Scott's family till much, much later, and Jared's family. Jared had, Jared's brother and stuff. But it seems like they had a lot of love. They were coming from places of love, and they had a lot of support from their families, and that seemed like an important part of who they were. Yeah, when Jared was in West Side Story. We all went out there to see that, and that was really exciting. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. But you know, his family was there, and they're just like, yeah. It just seemed like as far as where that come from, I don't know. Just good people. Them good folks.
So do you feel like their families and their upbringing informed their friendship with each other?
Could have been. I don't know much about their family. You know, it's they had such confidence though in themselves that it could only have, if, to me it felt like can only have come from having just a strong family upbringing somewhere. That, who knows? Maybe they were. Maybe I'm completely wrong about that. I'd never asked. The subject never came up.
Did you get the idea that they believed in each other?
Whether or not they believed in each other, they never doubted each other. That's for sure. They're just like, it's not like they didn't fight though. You know, those guys, it was like sibling rivalry. You know, they'd be like at each other's throat 1 second, and then a minute later they'd be like, nothing had ever happened. You know, it was beautiful. The way that they could go from one extreme to the other, and it not, there was no, you know, no grudges or whatever. It was just like, yeah, it was cool. First time, but you know, they're definitely affected by their background. When we were going up to record the first Carp album, I got a ride with them in the van, and they were. We were driving through. Driving out to Lacey for some reason, and there was a guy hitchhiking. They picked up a hitchhiker, and it was some guy they knew. They'd known from high school, and he was going to work, and he was talking about he worked at this tire shop, you know, and they do auto body work, and he paints the cars, and he gets paid like $18 an hour, and blah blah blah, pretty good. And I was like, whoa, $18 an hour, that's pretty good. Wow, I wish I had $18 an hour, you know. And I was thinking, well, this sounds. And I was in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, wow, I wonder if these guys are regretting the fact that they're in this rock and roll band, basically going nowhere, whereas their contemporaries are, you know, doing the things that people do, and they get out of high school, and they get married, and they have kids, and they get jobs, and they do stuff like that, and everyone. I mean, this guy was a really nice guy, and they were all like really polite to him and friendly. And then he got out of the car at the auto body shop, and we pulled back into traffic, and nobody said anything. And then one of them said, "What a loser." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess they know what they want to do."
Yeah. So what was that like? Did you get an idea of what they thought, envisioned for their own future? You know?
No, I don't think they ever thought about the future. I mean, Jared obviously thought about the future because he finished high school, and but I don't know if he finished high school because he was worried about the future, or just felt like an obligation to his family, or maybe he just wanted to have a sense of accomplishment. We never talked about it. I mean, Jared is really such a good person. He seems so. I know I said this about them before, but he's just so kind-hearted. He's always so concerned. He really is concerned about people, and I've always definitely been times I'm like, whoa. he really cared. Like you feel like maybe you'd get jaded or something, but he's always had, yeah, he's a good egg, as we say in the music business. But what was the question? I forget. Oh, their future. Well, I don't know. They didn't seem to think much beyond playing some shows and maybe making a record or two, making up some good songs. And I loved that Carp were, I mean, we've been talking a lot about Tumwater, we're talking about Olympia, but they had a place, a sense of place was in their music. And I love that about them too. You know, See You at Lake Fair, and just songs about Lacey and stuff. And that's really, you know, I love that about when artists are inspired by their environment like that, you know, going back to blues songs and the Modern Lovers, you know, songs about Boston and whatever. But that's one of the things I loved about them as a band, is that it's like folk music. They're singing about where they are and who they are and what's around them. And yeah, it's really from the heart.
Yeah. Why do you think that's important? Like, why does that mean something to you? Do you know what I mean?
It means something because they're not just, Carp isn't just saying like, okay, how do we become a successful band? Oh, everyone's growing a beard nowadays. We better grow a beard. Or, oh, yeah, it's cool to write about this or that. Or we have to have this in our song. Or oh, we better put a girl in our band if we want to be successful, or whatever. It's like they just were who they were, and they just let it happen the way it happened. And they looked around and they're like writing songs about what it makes sense to them to write about, which is the things in their life, which is right there. Lake Fair, the Lake Fair Parade. Yeah.
What was your sense of differences that did or didn't exist between like hanging out socially and seeing the three of them together and watching a show?
Watching a Carp show?
Yeah.
Well, you didn't really, I didn't, you know, it was, I'd see them together. Mostly it was Chris and Scott, but sometimes, you know, it was Chris, Scott, and Jared. And obviously they just were having so much fun. And then they would play a show, and it's not like Jared was the responsible one or anything, but he definitely, it felt like there were times when he was rounding the, okay, let's, because playing was important to them, but it seemed like sometimes things, they easily distracted, I think is probably the best way to describe it. Oh, there was one time, one of my favorite Carp shows was at this Capitol Theater afternoon show, Sunday afternoon show. And I don't remember this happening a lot, but for some reason, Scott had to work. Now, he had a job, but he didn't get off work on time, and they were going to just play without him, Scott and Jared. I mean, Chris and Jared were going to play without Scott, and so they asked if anyone could play. They got Ian Vanek to play, and Ian at the time was quite young. He was, I don't know how old he was, 13 or 12 or 11 or something. He was pretty young, and I don't think he even knew that he played drums. So he came up, and it was really quite devastating, because he'd obviously seen Carp many times, just like the rest of us. But not only could I not step into Scott's shoes to play drums, like I can't play drums, but I wouldn't dream of attempting to play in Scott's place. But Ian really, everyone was quite impressed. Like people didn't really know who Ian was, but after that, people knew who Ian was because he played. He's he's that kid who played with Carp. He's the new drummer of Carp, basically. But then Scott came back and he was the drummer again. It was really only for a few minutes. But and you know Jared and Chris, they never bat an eye. They're just like they're playing with Ian, and they weren't like, "Oh, you're good, kid." Oh, that's. They weren't like trying to like encourage him, or whatever. They just like started playing, and he started playing, and when they were done, they were like, "Hey, thanks," and it was just like just a, just just another day.
Now, I want to ask you about. We started talking about what Scott was like as a drummer, but first, um, what was your impression of what Carp meant to them,
Carp.
to the members?
It seemed like they wanted to be a band because it made sense to be a band, and they liked bands like Unwound and the Melvins and whatever. Um, and they was like, oh, let's. They just seemed like the thing to do. Um, they never. I don't remember them ever saying anything about, like, you know, if you watch The Decline of Western Civilization Part 2 of the Metal Years, and every band in there, this interview is like, well, when we make it, we're going to do this. And when we make it, we're going to do that. Like, what they're doing right now is they're not really doing what they really want to do. But when they make it, then they'll really be doing something. But Carp was, there was never like, someday we're going to be doing what we want to do. They were doing it. And this whole concept of make it wasn't really in their world because they were already doing what they wanted to do. And if they got paid $30 for a show, that was gravy. If they get to put out a record, great. But there was, I mean, from the moment they started, there was enthusiasm about them. You know, like everyone loved them from the word go, and it was a big deal. Like, okay, Carp's making a record. It's a big deal, you know. And Ryan Baldo's put out their first single on Atlas, and Clint recorded it. And like Clint was, you know, he's one of these Tacoma people who was pretty cynical about everything, but he loved Carp. I mean, to him, they were the answer. And he was so psyched to be recording them, to having them record at his studio. And Brian was like, why does it take so long to make a record? Just to prove that it doesn't have to take long, he recorded the record and put it out within 3 weeks. Covers printed, everything. I mean, he worked at Tomorrow Printing, I think, or no, Graphic Communications or somewhere. So he was able to, like, from the moment they started recording to the time we had the record in our hands, it was like less than 3 weeks. And definitely a record worth waiting for. I would have waited longer than 3 weeks, but I'm glad I didn't have to.
What was it like going to see Scott? What was it like watching Scott play drums?
Scott was a very effective hard rock drummer. And I say hard rock as opposed to like heavy metal because it seemed like he drew from a era prior to the new metal world of like Motley Crue and Metallica and all that kind of crap. He seemed to draw from a deeper well. And there might have been some grimaces, but that felt more like out of concentration than to try to put on a show. That's one thing about Carp is I never felt like they were putting on a show. They were just doing it. And it was almost like it was almost like a Metallica thing where like they were doing it for themselves. And if the audience was there, that's cool. But perhaps they had in their mind this perfect heavy hard rock thing that they were trying to create and get to that place. And so every show was them trying to get to that place, something like that. Maybe that might be a little too intellectual to describe the situation because it was really much more primal.
How did you putting out their records come about?
Uh, well, I'd asked them a couple times, or hey, if you want to make an album, let's make an album, blah blah blah. Let's do a record, blah 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 blah. Like, yeah, yeah, cool. And Candace also lived in the Martin, and she she and I were running K, and of course we love them. Mikey lived right down the hall from us, where our office was in the Chinatown, and Mikey lived in the hall, so you know we'd see those guys all the time. We'd see them in the hallway. We'd see them at the hallway at work. We'd see them at the shows. I mean, the two main all ages spaces were right downstairs from there, you know, backstage at the Capitol Theater and stuff. So it was a small little world there that where all the people worked at the State Theater. They lived in Chinatown in the Martin. Shows at the Capitol Theater. It's kind of like everything within 2 blocks. Anyway, at one point, they said they wanted to talk to us. And we thought, oh, okay, well, maybe we're finally going to do that single. And so they came over to Candace's place, and they were like, they're very solemn. They were like, okay, we would like to make an album on K. And they had it all worked out. They knew the name, they knew what they wanted them. I mean, it was like they knew exactly what they wanted to do. And they just wanted to make sure it was going to be okay with us. We're like, yeah, whatever you want. Absolutely. They knew where they wanted to record it, and it was all planned out. It was, so that was exciting. And yeah, they did the covers with the cards, and they cut them all up. And another craft project they had going over there at Michelle's apartment. Yeah, so that came out. Around the same time that we put out the Link album. Link and Carp were like two of the young bands in Olympia that were, it's like, like flip sides of the same coin in a way. But so Link and Carp and all those bands, both, I mean, I think the common denominator between Link and Carp were bands like Tree People and Cracker Bash. They were like the older bands that those guys all really looked up to. Older being just a couple years old, like Unwound era. But they were like Tree People were from Seattle, Boise, and Cracker Bash were from Portland. And whenever those bands played in Olympia, those people were psyched. And yeah, and right around that time, Vern used to always have these. Every Friday, he'd have poker games in the Red House, in his room in the basement. And I guess it was fall of '93. I was hanging out at the poker game, and I had just started working with Doug Marsh, he had left the Tree People to start this new thing, and we were doing the Halo Benders. And Chris and Scott, they were like, I heard you're going to do some music with Doug. And I was like, yeah, we started playing some songs and got some songs. And they're like, well, are the songs going to be as sad as the Built to Spill songs? Like, they were very concerned. Like, they wanted to make sure that this was going to be real, that it wasn't going to be like just a lark, because they took what the music Doug did very seriously. Yeah, same with Link. I mean, 2 members of Link ended up being in Built to Spill for a while. So anyway, that was like a important touchstone, I think, to both those bands. And yeah.
When you were talking about the mustaches, wild conversation, I thought that was pretty funny. It sounded like they had like a litlittle meeting beforehand, or they got their
Well,
shit
they
together.
already knew what they want. I mean, they had a lot of songs, and they knew how they wanted to present them. It's going to be an album. It's going to be like this. You know, they may have already had the song order and everything already figured out. I mean, they were very. They had it all planned out. It's great. They're real visionary. You know, it was good because I mean, I never doubted that they were visionary. They seemed visionary to me. That's one of the things that were great about them is that they had something in that they were going for. They were striving towards, and that to me that's really exciting when there's a band where people are they have a vision. Yeah.
So, well, just as a side note, I really like how you've been describing, because I think it's really important differentiation between the difference between like having goals and having like love.
Uh huh.
You know, like being like, oh, we're gonna do this, or being like, oh, we're really in love with this,
Uh huh.
and we're just gonna do that. We're gonna be in love with it. I think that's great.
Well, one thing that's great about Olympia, or has been, you go to a town that gets known for music. Like at different times, different cities have had this an explosion of this is the scene. Minneapolis, Athens, Georgia, whatever, Austin, Texas, and then you go and you play there, and there's like a couple things that seem to happen. One is that it's like, oh, Austin's the place. It's going to be great. Playing in Austin's great. We played to Austin, you know, and there was like 3 people there, and the 3 people, they're all in bands, and they're all like telling you about their publishing deal and their, you know, their manager and blah 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 and all this crap, and it was so refreshing to never hear anyone talk about that crap. You know, I might talk to Justin about his new album because every record was, you know, to me, I just wanted to be able to say, wow, I noticed that you did this on that record. It's really cool, and I love this song or whatever, because I feel like my place in the world of music is that I'm a fan of music. And so I have the privilege of being able to be there when these great works are created. You know, when they recorded the first Carp album, they invited me to come along. You know, had nothing to do with the recording of the record. But Justin never would talk to me about like, yeah, all these labels are trying to get a hold of us, or, you know, he might talk about things like, oh, hey, who set up that house show for you in Santa Cruz or whatever. You know, he might ask some information, some networking thing, but he's never talking the music biz. And Carp never talked about that kind of crap. They never talked about even if the record's even sold. You wouldn't know it from them. You know, they're just doing it. They're just having fun.
And what did you think of the progression of their records, like Out from Mustaches?
Well, I'd never liked Mustaches Wild. I loved the songs on Mustaches Wild, but I felt like it hadn't captured the essence of those songs, and it always bothered me. So when they decided to do Suplex in a different studio, I was glad, and I think it came off much better. It was more representative of how they could the way it just felt like it was the way Carp could stretch and move. The first record felt a little too tight to me, and then you know, Self-Titled was just, it was devastating. You know, so thick and deep. It's, yeah. But the songwriting, the lyrically, it moved away from, not too far, but it was good that they, with the second album, especially, from the first. But what's really cool about the first album, I have to say, is I love that song. We're way up high, we're way up high, because the State Theater had a lot to do with everyone, because it was only 99 cents, between 90 cents and $1.50. It changed a lot, went back and forth, dollar, 99 cents, $1.50. And that movie Cliffhanger showed there for several weeks, and everyone saw it, a few times, and I remember when I first heard that song, when the first time that I heard them do that song, I was like, oh, that's like that. I was like, that's like that movie Cliffhanger. But I just thought that was my own weird connection. I had no idea that actually had inspired the song, and yeah, good song though.
Are you talking about the Sylvester Stallone
Yeah.
mountain climbing movie?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I always what I liked about that song